My name's Eric Mingarance. I'm a certified revenue enablement professional, thanks to the Revenue Enablement Society and their CREP program, joined by Barbara Mazziotti, who's my co-host, also CREP certified and the executive director of the program. She will introduce our guest speaker, not to steal any thunder, but like operational buyer engagement, empowering enablement to improve sales execution. So first thing we need to do is understand the buyer engagement. That's the data we're going to go into today. What do buyers actually engage with during the sales cycle? And then how are we going to operationalize that information? That's where we empower you, the enablement practitioners, to actually move the needle on sales execution. And it's probably no secret that now more than ever, the buyer's journey is a digital journey. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Barbara Mazziotti, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Well, good morning and good evening to some of our folks from across the pond. I'm so happy to see some participation internationally. That's fantastic. We talk about the role of enablement being to align and drive readiness and performance. So most people are used to doing the whole readiness part. We're working on helping alignment across different functions in the revenue engine. And I'm really happy that Elay is going to share this insight about how enablement can contribute to actually driving better performance. So I'm happy to have Elay Cohen, CEO of SalesHood, one of the founders in enablement and driving the actual science of enablement. So Elay, share what you've learned.
I can't wait. Looking forward to this, everyone. Really exciting. And thank you again, Eric. Thank you, Barbara. Love the partnership. We've been partnering with RES from day one, and just super grateful that we continue to partner. And the CREP program is amazing. And this is an important topic. I think, we spend a lot of time as enablers talking about readiness, talking about learning, coaching, learning path, content creation. And I believe as we begin to layer in AI, and as AI becomes an essential character in the buyer journey, that we as enablers, as RevOps leaders, as enablement leaders, we need to be really maniacally focused on execution. And this is why when Eric and Barbara and I talked about, what would be interesting in 2026, given everything happening, and I posed this topic and this research that we're doing, they thought this was a good moment to introduce it. And so this is hot off the press, as they say, and really, really excited. And why is this so critical? B2B and modern B2B is changing, and it continues to change. And we've seen dramatic changes in the last decade, especially with COVID, with folks being at home, asynchronous collaboration, decision makers are buying and selling from home. So, it's just like everything changed. And so now with a digital buyer's journey, we're seeing informed buyers. We've heard the stat. Folks are showing up to your demo request forms, and they are already informed. They've seen your demos, they've talked to your customers, they've gone to your G2, so they're ready to talk business, right? We're also seeing that there are more stakeholders, a lot more stakeholders, and as you'll hear later, invisible stakeholders. There are people that are making decisions about your software, about your services that you may not even know, and how good would it be if you did know it? The deals are getting more complex. You've got decisions are now CEO, CFO, CIO, and then AI just kind of 10x's the complexity. And then consensus building is harder to make. You layer that on top of kind of we're still predominantly living in email, and teams, reps, and their buying teams are still passing spreadsheets back and forth, price sheets and business cases, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got invisible buying committees, which is probably the biggest challenge, the biggest black hole we have in the buyer journey. And and listen, this is a conversation, so I know that Eric and Barbara are going to add comments, and they've got their points of view, and really excited. And let's go a little deeper before we introduce the data to you. So I love this stat from Gartner. You've seen it. You've seen different versions of it. 75% of B2B buyers prefer a digital self-service sales experience, right? So okay, but it's kind of nuanced. Our data shows that may be true for front of the funnel, and I'll completely support that. Stage one, stage two-ish, when folks show up on your door, they filled out a demo request, they booked a meeting, Yeah, they kind of want to just give them what they need, right? But as you go further down the funnel, as you move further into the buyer journey, they do require a consultative, trusted advisor to guide them. So that's why you see the chart going down. So the idea of digital self-service, it becomes less real as we move further down the pipe. And the other point I'm going to make here, I think our universe today, our B2B selling world today, we know when we can track engagement with a DocuSign, right? You send someone a DocuSign, and our reps, our managers, our forecast calls, we're like, did we get have they viewed the doc? Think of that engagement, right? And then there's engagement at the front of the funnel, which is when you're sending them emails. Oh, are they opening the emails? But stage two, stage three, stage four, like all that middle activity, which is actually how you know if a deal is going to close or not, is a black hole, and there's pretty much limited buyer engagement. And let me pause there. I'm going to pose a question in a minute that we asked ourselves. But Eric and Barbara, any comments? What would you add? When you look at this chart, what does it mean to you?
I think this with the previous slide, which shows us kind of the complication of all the things involved, means that if we aren't tracking, like you're saying, if it's a black box, if we don't have an idea to all those the invisible committees,
Yeah.
the things that they actually care about, how many people are in there, those touch points, then we see, okay, wow, we're actually not facilitating for them if they're going to do more of this on their own. how
On
are
their own.
we how are we helping them to do it on their own?
A few months ago, given the context of what's happening in B2B sales, given the context of kind of agentic AI and everyone's trying to agentify their sales process and we've got agents everywhere now, we really wanted to understand which buyer engagement patterns actually signal deal momentum. It's a big question because there's a lot of noise out there. And so this is the analysis that we did. And so for those of you that are less familiar with SalesHood, we're an agentic AI revenue enablement platform. We're the enablement layer for AI selling, and we're all about helping revenue teams and AI agents. Like we've really leaned into AI to learn, coach, and execute together to win more deals. And how do we do it? One of the ways that we help our customers do it is with digital sales rooms. And so what we're looking at here was we've got a lot of companies that if we go back to Eric's poll, that are pretty advanced in how they're leveraging digital buyer engagement to modernize their buyer journey. And so we looked across our customers and we looked across 50,000 digital sales rooms across 150 companies, nearly $1 billion of pipeline. We wanted the sample set of data to be, relevant and meaningful. Over 275,000 buyer contacts, 500 million of assets shared, and millions of events. And events are interactions, engagements, like view a deck, download something, ask a question. Like think of that. And then the data set spans a wide range of deal sizes. So we looked SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. So we have examples of deals as small as $1,000 and then deals as large as 7.8 million. What's amazing about the companies we're working with, whether it's Smart Recruiters, Federado, KPA, and many, many, many more, is they're able to attribute the buyer engagement to pipeline, to closed won, to forecast accuracy. And as enablers, Shelby, Kelly, two enablers, they definitively can sit down with their CRO, their CMO, their PMM leaders, all their frontline managers, and they can say, hey, your buyers are engaged digitally, and we can tell you with confidence that win rates are up when our salespeople share certain types of content at these times in the sales process. And same with Kelly and Dave Frechette, who's a CRO, swears by it. Incredible stories. Just wanted everyone to just feel this isn't something new. We've been working with these companies for years and years and years and years, and they're seeing dramatic lifts in win rates, revenue growth. First question we asked ourselves is buyer engagement and at a macro level, is our buyer engagement signals like these events that we talked about, these activities, do they result in higher pipeline and higher closed won? And absolutely, what we saw across all that data is high performing digital sales rooms defined by closed won had an average of 16 repeat buyer visits. Just internalize that for a moment. We're talking about a deal where you've got, a number of buyers that you're engaging with. You've got a salesperson that shared some content, and then the deals that win have high engagement. High engagement, high engagement. It's so critical. And so when we talk about operationalizing this data, if you're using digital sales rooms and you want to start setting benchmarks, and you're coaching your frontline managers, introducing this concept of buyer engagement as a forecast indicator, like that becomes your benchmark. Guess what? And Eric and Barbara, right? If you've got a deal that has 0 to 5, repeat visitors, what's the chances of it closing based on this data? Not as high. And so that becomes your benchmark. That becomes your benchmark. And so a single visit signals awareness, like, yeah, okay, they're a solution provider. Repeat visits, intent. Repeat visits are intent. Let me pause there and just let folks absorb that.
And Eli, you talked about the fact that those 16 visits, that could be across multiple people, right? That's multiple stakeholders in that buying committee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think
And
there's some
additionally,
examples.
oh, sorry. Aside, sorry for but not only is it different people that we may not have even had insight to, that black box you're talking about, but these are not engagements where the rep called them or they're having a check-in meeting. These are outside of your Salesforce have a meetings. This is what they're doing behind the scenes, behind
Yeah.
that activity that your CRM is capturing, or hopefully they're logging, those reps are logging the deals. This is activity happening that was in a black box that now you have some insight to.
Exactly. Black box is critical. We had no visibility of this data. There are some questions which I think are interesting. Folks are curious. So how are you getting 16 repeat buyer visits? We're going to get there, folks. We're starting with we want to set this baseline of just knowledge and just agree that buyer engagement equals higher win rates, higher deal size, and is a leading indicator of pipeline health. So that's the baseline. Next, we're going to get into, and we're going to give you examples of what good buyer engagement looks like versus bad buyer engagement, because not all buyer engagement is equal. Let's now talk about one kind of engagement, right? And I think there is the concept of being single threaded in a deal. We've been talking about this for decades, and I believe that there are ways to measure it, but we now know definitively that deals that have 7+ contacts have 7x engagement. And we can also see with confidence that deals that have basically all the deals on the left have a less number of people. They've got lower engagement. Their win rates are lower. Their average deal size are lower. Deals go quiet. And so we're living in a world where, we're coaching our teams and we're working deals, we're writing the forecast. And one day there's a deal in the pipe and the next day there isn't a deal in the pipe. And what happened? You can now know what happened because you can have a picture. If you're using this kind of data, you can have a picture of the impact of multi-threading. We're going to go a level deeper and show you the percentage, but it's pretty telling. Gartner has similar data. Gartner suggests that the average deal today is 6 to 10 kind of, and those are the invisible buyers. Remember, you got a champion, you got an economic buyer, you got influencers, you got stakeholders, 6 to 10 people. We're saying it's 7+ is our data. So we're aligned on that data. Again, I was curious. Gartner said it. I wanted to verify it, and I verified it.
Lots of folks, for you enablers here on the call today, when people say, hey, when your sellers say, oh, I'm multi-threaded, I got a champ and I have a meeting with my economic buyer, you can come back and say, look, we've got multiple studies and data that says you need half a dozen or more for you to, if you want to up the chances of your deals closing. Like you say, multi-threaded, but 2, 3, 4, even 5 threads aren't cutting it now that we have this bigger kind of buying committee.
Direct correlation between more engagement and how do you get more engagement? You put more contacts in there. And you get more people in the buying committee. And the cool thing is with tech today and with kind of AI agents kind of guiding the salesperson and also guiding the buyer, right? Now we're in a world where you can automate this and programatize this. A champion can invite people without even asking the salesperson, can I add them in, right? And so now you've got, if you do this right, if you add the right champion, you win them over, and you've built trust and credibility, and then they start inviting their stakeholders, you know how much you're learning about that deal then, right? You know how much you're learning. Like, check this stat out. Here's the thing. The problem is, it's still a small percentage. I know people like we share this data in another group in another meeting, and folks are like, "Come on, it can't be this way." It is this way. Only 12% of the deals had 7+ contacts. And so this is an opportunity. As enablers, this is an opportunity. What's the opportunity? Train your teams. Train your teams the importance of multi-threading. Guide them, coach them on the personas and the people, right? We do a lot of training on personas, but let's go one more step further. Push it forward, right? Go to the last mile. These are the types of people, and say it, make it obvious. If these people are not engaged, if we don't know what they're thinking, they're probably talking to your competitors. Be curious with your champions. That's training that we should be doing. Include the concept of multi-threading and deal reviews. Engagement's important. Contacts are important, and we need the right contacts. We need more than just a champion. You can't be single-threaded. Now the question is, what can we do with these champions? What can we do with these decision makers to kind of pull them in, to align them, to ultimately win them over? And so the thing that we've talked about for decades are mutual action plans. And I was curious, is it a signal of deal health? And the answer is yes. If there's a mutual action plan with milestones, with a compelling event, with a timeline, if it's activated inside of a digital buyer engagement experience inside of a digital sales room, here's what happens. You get 2x more buyer engagement with one versus without one. It's just like boom, there it is right there. Dave Frechette, who's the CRO from Federado, when he saw this data, when he initially rolled out digital sales rooms, he just basically said, from this point on, every deal has a mutual action plan, period, and a discussion. And that's the kind of executive alignment we need internally. That's the kind of support you need as enablers to get buy-in to ensure that these best practices are being implemented. And the largest deals have mutual action plans. And so really, really important. Again, train our teams, coach our teams, not just like, hey, yeah, we need mutual action plans. Train them on how to introduce it, how to pitch it, literally pitch it. Yes, pitch a mutual action plan. So I've been a big believer in mutual action plans for decades, and it's just great to see it being a key indicator of deal health.
Yeah, I often teach mutual action plans to sales teams, even customer success teams, if we want to move things along. First off, it's anchored in a compelling event that they care about. Secondly, it's, that the A in MAP could also be two A's, like agreed upon action.
Oh, I
Hey,
love that.
we've mutually agreed upon these actions, and so we both might want to be in whatever document we're using to track this. And it's a lot easier if it's asynchronous and digital than if, like, hey, we're going to have a standing meeting for everyone to just check off where we are and doing the things every week. So I love a mutual action plan that truly people get to interact with individually from both sides asynchronously. And I also like when we're asking our compelling date enablers, make sure your sellers are asking this. What's the impact if we don't make
Mm,
that compelling date, right? So that it's not just like, well, if they say, well, I guess then we're just kind of doing business as usual until we find something. I wouldn't forecast that deal. I would make, if they're like, well, I mean, we can't not make the date because this expansion is happening or this contract is up, then okay, we truly have something anchored in a compelling event. And now everyone is interested in making sure we have agreed upon actions.
yeah, I love that. The impact question tied back to the sequence of events. We talk about this, mutual action plans. We talk about it at kickoffs and QBRs, but how are you operationalizing it? Are you creating templates? Are you training your teams on actually understanding the line items? Get your teams to practice the sequence of events conversation. There's so much coaching and enablement we can do here to kind of up level how our teams are truly embracing mutual action plans with two A's, mutual agreed action plans, maps. I love that. You got to trademark that one. I So maps work,
Like
folks.
three things I think you're going to trademark ahead of
Oh,
me in
oh,
our
oh.
conversations leading up to this. It's okay. You can have them all, Eli.
I
I do
love it.
want to say that the part of the sharing of that plan is important because I've worked at enterprises where I'd love to share with them my spreadsheet or whatever, but I can't from SharePoint, or people are putting it in shadow IT like Dropbox to share it. So to be able to actually share collateral that isn't like a, hey, we have a deal desk that allows us to share the contract, but what, and we can share links to our, case studies on our website, but can you share something that's private and yet still external is a key part. When you said, are you creating these templates?
Yeah.
We should be creating the templates in a way that shows our go-to-market teams, here's how you do it logistically.
Yeah. Barbara, you said something interesting. And I agree with everything that you just said, Eric. Barbara, you suggested, and it's a great idea, set up a role play, right? And I think super smart, right? The role play where and here's my idea. Let me tell you, tell me if it's right, Barbara. You can set up a role play to simulate the last 5 minutes of a call.
Yeah.
You've done your call. So talk us through it. How would you set it?
So you're doing your first an early call. You've done some
Yeah.
discovery. You've gotten some buy-in from someone you think is going to. You're building into a champion, and you're trying to set up next steps. And instead, you want to set the table that you want to create a plan together
Yeah.
and put that into a digital room and track it together so that we know where we are and you can involve more of your stakeholders, but that keeps us on the same pace so that we know where we're both going.
Absolutely. And that's an easy role play to do where you can, let the salesperson. And by the way, like Barbara and Eric, let's pretend that the person who's on the receiving end of the call, who filled out a demo request, likes the demo. It's a healthy conversation. And they're like, hey, you know what? I'm not quite ready right now. Like, okay, we've just learned some information. So that's more data, right? And I think using a mutual plan, inviting them into a digital sales room, leveraging digital buyer engagement as a signal of deal health is really what we're trying to talk about. We're trying to give you more signals. And our job as enablers is to empower our salespeople with the tools, but also the knowledge so they can have these conversations. The role playing is a great way to to practice it. We could do role playing should be a lot more than the pitch and the demo. Like this is a great example. Last 5 minutes of a call, role play it and introduce the map and go. Like that's just, it's money. It's money. We got to keep going. Wow. There is a difference between good content and bad content. Good emails, bad emails, relevant emails, irrelevant, personalized, unpersonalized. And so I love Gartner's data. I just came back from the Chief Sales Officer conference in Vegas. A lot of good insights. A lot of companies are really trying to solve this buyer engagement. So you're all not alone. But 76% of buyers will avoid vendors, will avoid suppliers that send irrelevant messages. So things need to be relevant. They need to be mapped to the buyer journey. And 58% will avoid suppliers if you're just sending too much. So avoid noise. When I, as a salesperson, set up a digital sales room and I share it with my champion, I've introduced the map, I've got content in there that's curated, and I put in a pricing model that's relevant to what they're looking to buy, there's an 85% open rate on that. You compare that to I'm a salesperson, I've done a call, and I don't really introduce the site the right way. I send a link and I throw a bunch of case studies in there. That's sub 15% open rate. It's kind of counter. Like you'd think buyers and vendors, guess what? They want to hear from customer stories. They want to hear about companies like them. And if you think back to the digital self-service journey, it makes total sense now that we see the data, right? High engagement, pricing model, ROI calculator, business case, implementation materials, timelines, all the stuff. What kind of stuff? The stuff that is going to help me evaluate risk, justify decisions, and align stakeholders, build consensus internally. It makes sense as we see the data, and it's crazy like the spread. And the data on the left, you know what that data is more like? Marketing collateral. Marketing collateral. A couple sentences. I'm going to have Eric and Barbara jump in. The idea of sharing case studies, product PDFs, generic decks, They've already looked at all that stuff. They've gone to YouTube, they've gone to G2, they've clicked around your website, they've looked at the demos. They don't need that. They need a trusted advisor who's going to find out what problems they're trying to solve, work together to co-create a timeline, introduce a map, and then share highly relevant, highly personalized content that's going to help them evaluate risk and make decisions. So that's super interesting data here.
But what you're doing, part of what you're saying is that beginning of the journey where it's they want to do it on their own, that's what they're getting on the website. So if I can get a case study in the website and a product PDF, it's not that interesting or valuable to me. But here, where I'm trying to look at making a decision, as you say, de-risk, this is high value content that helps them move along.
Exactly. High
And that
value.
sorry, and that goes to your other slide, right? Where people are like, no, no, Doug, no one wants to send irrelevant content, irrelevant messages. But did they know that the case studies and the PDFs and the generic decks were irrelevant content? Did they know that those emails that they were sending were counting against them as like, oh, that goes into the irrelevant pile? So
Yeah.
of course, like Barbara just said, we should assume that if they're, 90% or some studies of people have, made a buying decision or checked out all the marketing stuff before they even talk to a marketer. Well, then don't send marketing stuff or ask them if that's something that they want to see. And the pricing model, I think we probably all knew that, but implementation, oh, that might be in a map, just saying. But implementation and
Yep.
how long it takes and the details of implementation, wow, that's something that means that's a great signal that someone's really thinking about what will it take to put this solution in place. So I love the fact, and everyone should be taking out their little cameras, old school, taking
Yeah.
snaps out of this, because this is what you want to share with your sellers of like, hey, these kind of fall into the low engagement content, meaning that it's just chalking up as irrelevant. And these are the things that they really want.
I'm envisioning, regardless of whether you're using a digital salesroom or not, everyone should and everyone will eventually. When we're giving you kind of a sneak peek into modern B2B selling here, getting you to appreciate the data so you can lean into it as well, right? Let's just pretend you're not using a digital salesman for a moment. Your takeaway here would be, wow, I really got to spend time building assets around pricing, business case development, ROI calculators, and yes, like implementation guides and customer success and like just think about in your business, in your market, in what your prospects need, just what are the things that they need to evaluate risk, justify decisions, and align stakeholders. And all too often we're getting a boatload of great content from marketing. Bless marketing, thank you very much. But it tends to be very front of the funnel. And so as enablers, it's our job to kind of recalibrate what is in the briefcase, what's in the toolkit of our sellers, and hopefully this gives you some insight into what they really need. And this is sales, right? And so 20% of our data is for customer success, renewal, add-on, expansion. And so their content is a little different. And so CSMs, check this out. Same thing happens, right? Look what's low engagement content, case studies, events and webinars. When you set up a site as a customer success manager and you're sharing, events and webinars, they get that on their own. They see the updates on LinkedIn. They go to your events channel. They get the marketing email alerts, all that good stuff. Generic product content. Crazy. Almost a 95% open when you are sharing roadmap and release information directly to your prospect, directly to your customers, excuse me, not your prospects. When you're providing CSMs are providing ROI business cases, it's equally important here. And competitive positioning. That's an interesting one, huh, guys? Competitive positioning. What happens is, we're a year into a deal, we're a year into a customer engagement, and our competitors, like, listen, this is an important concept in customer success. We might be on a year two, or we might be trying to get a renewal from a year one to a year two, but guess what? Our competitors are treating a deal as year one. And so we need to arm our champions, our administrators, the people that love us with competitive positioning all the time. So very high value content that a CSM can provide their team so they can keep the competition out and secure the renewal. What do you guys think of the CSM data?
I love it. I mean, I think obviously that's why we have CROs now is that we realize
Yeah.
80% And of the revenue, the lion's share of the revenue for SaaS companies lie on the customer success side. And that retention and expansion is so important. And it can't be just QBRs that are basically giving out usage reports. It has to be these types of things, the roadmaps, the release notes. You're on the inside. We have a true relationship. It's engagement. And that is what reduces churn, is the fact that they are engaged.
This data and the power of buyer engagement, digital buyer engagement happens with digital sales rooms, right? So Sales Hood, again, we're an agentic AI revenue enablement platform, and we're the kind of the enablement layer, for AI selling. And digital sales rooms are the perfect example of how our modern sales teams are going to sell with AI today. And just for folks that are less familiar, sales room, we have a digital sales room. Here's what you can expect in a digital sales room. You're going to be able to share content. You're going to be able to provide content around decision support. You're going to be able to have a chat in there. You're also going to have an AI agent in there. So your buyers who you may meet or may log in when you're asleep, they can ask questions and get answers. And that's really compelling. That's going to help you reduce the amount of time it takes decisions to happen. You're going to ultimately be able to engage multiple, kind of a multi-threaded committees. You're going to align on next steps. So digital sales rooms should have a mutual plan in there. They should have compelling events, timelines. And the beautiful thing is your champion and those invisible decision makers should be able to go in and also interact with all this. They should make requests. They should be able to update the mutual plan. That's how you know you're winning. For me, like I remember one morning I've been doing this for a long time, and one morning doing a big deal a little while ago, a few years back, and I got a text from my champion. And the champion starts saying, "Hey, the mutual plan, like I made all these changes." That's when I knew I was going to win the deal because we were collaborating on a timeline that was their timeline using our process. And then finally, the real money shot is all this engagement, whether they're viewing content, not viewing content, adding people, what they're viewing, what they're downloading, what they're sharing. That all becomes engagement activity that rolls up into forecast, into pipeline reviews, and all that good stuff. So that the digital sales room is how you do this, right?
But you might just consider creating a video around that where your sellers do a custom video to walk their, if they want engagement, walk them through. Here's where I put our previous recordings. Here's where our mutual action plan is. Just do a quick, it takes 60 seconds to walk them through in a video. Here's what's in the room. Here's how to interact with it so
Yeah.
that are intrigued, or if it's being flown up the flagpole or done internally, they can say, yep, that's something. Okay, now I saw it and I feel comfortable about getting in there, or I know what's in there, so I'm encouraged to go in there.
Yeah, you do. You're so right, and you bring up a key point. The other thing that the digital sales room needs to have for it to be meaningful and for it to really become a destination for your sellers and the buying committee is it also needs to have the calls, right? So whether it's the calls are coming from Gong or Zoom or Teams or whatever the tech is. So you can imagine, like if I go back here, you've got this site that has content and mutual plan. It's got the calls. It's truly the destination and it's branded, right? And I think Eric's point's a great one, right? I love at the end of a call, last 5 minutes, I'm popping open the site and I'm saying, listen, before we go, the site's been set up for you. Here's the calls syncing right now as we speak. Here's where we've got, you said you needed ABC. Here's some of the additional materials that's already in there. And what else do you need, right? And so it's a conversation. So I think the idea that you want to really leverage, you want to benefit from this modern digital buyer engagement, in order to get there, these are the kind of the pillars that you need to operationalize. Number one, you got to be thoughtful about the content, right? So think of the buying journey. What are the pieces of content in stage one? Even though it's mostly self-service, you're still going to have stage one content. I agree. You're still going to have some case studies, some generic. It's still going to be there, right? But when the deal moves from stage two to stage three, what's the recommended content that should be added to the site at that moment in time, right? So being thoughtful about that, partnering with all your content stakeholders in your organization, having a point of view on the buyer journey. The CREP program is amazing because it really uplevels your strategic thinking and helps you think about kind of enablement across a modern strategic buyer journey and beautiful complement to this. So content number one and content templates by stage, right? Critical. Number two, multi-threading, right? This isn't just a thing that we tell our people to do. You saw the data. Only 12% of 50,000 sites had more than 7 contacts. There's room for improvement here with our customers. And if I look across the industry, only 9% of sellers are actually using digital sales rooms today. We're at the beginning. This is early days of modern selling, and AI is going to pull us there even faster with expert agents and all that good stuff. So you got to be building into your practice, building into your program, multi-threading standards and coaching. When you're doing your deals and you're doing your deal reviews and you're doing your win stories and you got people standing up on stage at your kickoffs, have them highlight what their multi-threading strategy was, right? Mutual action plan. We talked a lot about that. Got to add the extra A in here for Eric. I love it. Do you want to have trainings? Do you want to have frameworks? Do you want to have templates? It's not enough to tell people just create a list. Like, you got to show them. And if you've got different segments of your business, SMB, mid-market, maybe different solutions, you're going to have a mutual action plan template by segment, by geo, different ones for new business, different ones for add-on. The more time you spend investing in that and making those resources available, the better your people are going to be able to integrate them, and the more relevant it's going to be for your buyers. Business case and ROI, so critical. I know we talk about value selling all the time, but boom, it's head and shoulders some of the most important content that buyers engage with. And then buyer engagement metrics, what are they? What are you going to measure in your business? Right. So this is you partnering with RevOps, right? You're going to look at the number of contacts. You're going to look at the number of pieces of content. You're going to look at the number of repeat visits. That's all data that can roll up into a score, and then that score can inform. It can inform your pipeline reviews. It can inform your forecast. It's the ultimate, right? Go speak to our friends at Smart Recruiters. Speak to Caitlin, Brandon. Speak to Shelby McPherson. Talk to them about how their digital sales room and their buyer engagement data is the ultimate signal of deal health. And it's just phenomenal examples of companies that really lean into it. And finally, don't forget the frontline managers. You know what? It's like we have these great ideas as enablers and we build the templates and we build the content, we pull it all in, but then we gotta show our managers how to leverage the data, how to, for example, you're doing a deal review and the manager should be saying, hey, pop up the site. Let me see it. Let's see what the site looks like. Or at a minimum, what content have you shared this week with them, right? If they're not using digital sales rooms. And I'm really hopefully people will start leaning into digital sales rooms, but content sharing can work a number of other ways as well. I'm gonna go forward. Any comments or additions here?
That last thing you said, I think, is key for all of you who are trying to do something with this data right away. If you don't have a digital sales room, it doesn't mean you can't do these 6 pillars that you just see here. You can certainly do a mutual action plan without a digital sales room. Does a digital sales room make it easier? Yeah,
Yeah.
but you can still do the work. Does an all-in-one gym with all the great equipment make working out easier? Sure, but that's not an excuse to not work out. There's plenty of ways to do the work that don't require the expensive gym.
I love it. That's a good metaphor. That's a good one. I
It-
Barbara.
Yep, it's build the behavior. What Eric's saying is build the good behavior. So this is what we're talking about. Build the behavior in terms of the work that you do in enablement and the work that matters for your sales team to see success.
Yeah.
I like Chris's question here of if you have any data or statistics or feedback on the buyer's sentiment towards the DSR. I mean, I think we can extract if they're engaging with it, but is there anything specific to like, how do they feel about DSR?
Absolutely. So great question. You know, we ran a survey and we spoke to some of our customers' buyers, and we asked them how was the experience, and overwhelmingly positive. And some of the quotes I remember folks saying was, we chose Smart Recruiters, and the Smart Recruiters team are on record saying this publicly as well. We chose Smart Recruiters because they showed up better organized, they out-professionalized the competition. So this is a moment, right? If only 9% of sellers are doing this, look across your industry, look at your top competitors, chances are none of them are. And so by you doing it, you're instantly showing up more organized, more professional, and you can drive repeatability. So the buyers like the organization, they like the thoughtfulness. I'm gonna just throw this out there. There's a sub conversation on this where some people are saying, well, it means that buyers have to log into multiple sites, and shouldn't the digital sales room be the other way? It should be a buyer. Like, okay, we'll get to a place in this world sometime in the future where the seller agents are going to talk to the buyer agents, and they're going to be living in this harmonious, but we're not there yet, folks. We're still trying, as Barbara said, to build the behavior. And we're trying to get folks to think through strategically multi-threading, to introduce mutual plans, to be thoughtful about building a business case, to share in content, even as Eric said, to record those personal videos. Like those are 4 or 5 things that we're not doing effectively across the organization, across the universe. And we can do better at that. But universally, people appreciate when a buyer shows up organized and they put everything in one place where the buyers don't need to go and look for where is the call review, where's that proposal, where's this, where's that. So yes, we've talked about role playing. I've thought a lot about what are the specific buyer-centric skills, buyer-centric training that we should be doing to help our sales teams leverage, do consensus-driven kind of buyer-centric selling, right? So number one, you got to be thoughtful about rolling out consensus building. And so this is going to mean different things in each of your industries, but teaching sellers how to engage multiple stakeholders, driving alignment, testing your champion, right? We haven't really talked about that important concept, but the digital sales room, the mutual action plan is the ultimate way to test your champion if they are a champion or if this is a real deal that has a real opportunity that you could be working right now. So consensus building, right? If you haven't thought about rolling out consensus building training, now would be a good moment to be adding that to your 2026 training plan. Business value and decision support. So helping your sellers be very focused on ROI, business case, and implementation planning. I think so critical. We tend to forget the importance of training our team on communicating the value of customer success, communicating what happens after a deal is signed. What does implementation look like? So the more we can front end a sales process with that, the more trust we're going to build and the greater likelihood and confidence that we're going to have that the deal is going to close because the buyer is going to believe they really got us and they're going to take care of us after signature. And then listen, frankly, just digital buyer engagement, how to record a video, how to leverage tech, to do this, how to measure, how to share content. Like there's a technical aspect here that we need to train our people on, especially those of you that are using digital sales. We can't assume that everyone knows how all this works, right? And so there are best practices, and so anyway, I just want to give folks just a little bit of what you can do with your teams, and I think I've got. We'll kind of slow down here and we'll kind of open this up to broader questions. But for me, as I reflect, and I've got a summary slide with the benchmarks after this, as I reflect on where we are in the industry. We've been so focused on efficiency. We've been so focused on how do we drive more sales activity that now I believe, based on this data, high performing organizations are asking a different question. How do we make the buying experience so effective that deals move faster? How do we make the buying experience so effective that buyers have a very positive experience for that question? And so I do believe the future of sales, the future of sales enablement, the future of revenue enablement is a lot more buyer centric. And doesn't mean we're not still enabling our sellers. We just need to enable them the right way. And hopefully this data and all this data here that we've shared with you will give you some clues into where the industry is going and where you can lean in to help your teams be better at meeting the buyers where they want to buy. And I'll just put this up here. This is a summary of some of the key signals that we've observed with our data. And I'm sure there are some questions and I'm sure there's some comments. And let me pause and just open the floor up to you two.
Yeah, what do we see here for questions? Barb, do you see something that I'm missing that we haven't touched on?
Let's see.
I would be remiss if I didn't make an open invitation to any and all of you while you guys are getting the questions that would love to invite you to see a digital buyer engagement, see the digital sales room in action. We can show you what it looks like, how easy it is to to curate content, to record the videos, to create the mutual action plans, how the expert agent works in to support and streamline the decision process. So please, if anyone's interested in a demo, you can reach out to myself. LinkedIn, you can find me. Just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll get you sorted. And we'd love to support each and every one of you. And like Eric and Barbara said, all the data will be available to you. And
It does make you seem organized right off the bat. I mean, the internet was born, I think, on the idea of a portal where I can find everything in one place. So here's a page. It's a launch page for me, and I can go over it. So it's saving time for everyone because everything's in one spot, and it makes you seem more transparent. Everything's here. All our calls are here. The mutual action plan. So you're organized, you're transparent, and you're saving everyone time.
here's just a summary. We went through a lot of slides. But it gives you some of the benchmark information that you can bring back to your teams and start prioritizing where you want to start to up level how you're doing digital buyer engagement with your organizations. With or without digital sales rooms, with or without saleshood, I think there's a lot you can do. And I'd love to hear from you folks. So please ping me, let me know what you thought of this of the data. If you need more information, the actual slides will be available, the reports being finalized. And I am super grateful for Eric and Barbara co-hosting this with me. It's really been a wonderful experience going through this and organizing the data in a way that we thought would be meaningful to enablers around the world. So thank you again.
Barbara, you want to get the last word?
Just repeat where I started, and that is remember that the scope and value you can bring as an enablement professional is more than just setting people up with readiness. This is the opportunity to actually drive things that will help them in their performance and change business results, which means to help that you change some of the things that you're doing in terms of what you enable to, and you provide the tools and the guidance of how they can improve their own execution. So thanks for joining us. We're going to have more of these conversations, and I have so much respect and guidance that we've gotten from Elay. Thank you for your partnership, Elay.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Elay.
Have a great day.
See you soon.